Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Better Show. I'm Ian Micketel.
I'm Darren Austin.
And I'm Mark Rogers.
And on this episode, we are talking about gratitude and things that we are super into right now. Just another kind of fun episode during a stressful time, guys. And yeah, it's just something we want to do. I'm a little burnt out. I don't know about you guys. I'm a little burnt out on COVID stuff and serious topics. And so it's actually been
I've stopped watching the
fun.
news.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not tuning into the updates anymore. I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm buckled in for the long haul. I don't need to know. I don't need to know what happened today.
I'm checking in every few days, but I've certainly stopped the daily spend an hour absorbing what's going on thing. It's just too stressful, and it's also there's not that much new information. I think there was.
That's the problem.
The density of the information was really high a few weeks ago, and now it's the stress to information exchange is not good right now.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So what we wanted to do was each of us, the three of us on this episode, are going to cover one topic, one thing that we are just really enjoying, really into, geeking out on, whatever, right now, and share some specifics around it, some things specifically that we're into. Maybe it will inspire you. Maybe it'll be interesting to you. And maybe it'll get you thinking about, how can you be grateful for something that you really enjoy? Maybe there's something that I actually had a friend, guys, that told me, I brought up this topic to them, told them that we're prepping for the show. And they said, I actually forgot about this thing that I love because it's been such a weird time. Like I completely blanked that I love doing this thing. And they were like, oh, this is a thing I can do at home. Like, why have I stopped doing this? And right. I think that, if you're watching this or listening, you may be in that same boat potentially. And so this may get your juices flowing on a little back to normalcy, a little, what are the things you love when things weren't crazy? So at the top of the show, though, let me mention a few things. So if you would like to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you. And you can do that in a few ways. You can email the show, hi@bettershow.io. You can reach out to us on the socials, the Twitters, the Instagrams of the world, at The Better Show is the handle there. And then you can call us. You can literally take this thing. This is a phone. It turns out it makes telephone calls. Turns out.
Who knew?
Showing this on the video call as well. And you can dial us and leave us a voicemail. It's a thing. And you can do that by dialing 1-971-333-8007. That is the way to leave us a voicemail, and we may use it on the show in the future.
Hey, I have an idea. Yeah. We should put a slide with all of this stuff and put it on the YouTube. Since now we're doing the video component, we just put the slide up and you know what I mean?
Good point.
Okay, coming in the next episode.
Yes. And you may notice
Always getting better.
If you are watching or hearing us talking about video in this episode, we will be showing props and things and stuff. We are now recording video versions of the podcast as well. They're up on YouTube, bettershow.io/YouTube. You can just go watch us if you would prefer that. All right, so a couple other things. If you are not digging this episode, if you do want more variety or other types of topics, we have
doom and gloom about the COVID.
We haven't done too much doom and gloom.
No, we haven't. I'm just kidding.
We've done a variety of topics. Emergency preparedness or managing stress or COVID economics. And that is all available in a special playlist that we have created, bettershow.io/COVID, COVID. And that will get you to that playlist of a bunch of different episodes that you can go check out if you so please. All right. So with all of that kind of preamble out of the way, guys, I'm really curious. Why does gratitude matter to you real quickly? We've done episodes on it, so you could go in our back catalogs. But, Darren, you specifically mentioned this as something that you wanted to call out this episode. Why?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, the thing that is, I think, the most meaningful to me is that gratitude keeps me grounded and it keeps me, frankly, in a positive state of mind. And there's actually some science behind it too, like the practice of gratitude, like the idea or the regular practice of gratitude actually can counteract particularly negative feelings that otherwise might crop up. So it is, for me, it's a sense of staying appreciative and grateful in the moment. and not looking at things that I don't have, but rather reflecting on the blessings that I do have. So it keeps me in a grounded state. It also helps me develop empathy. And I think that's probably true of a lot of people. When you practice gratitude for what you have, you also see potentially what other people may not have, and it operates in that capacity as well. I don't know. That's how I feel about it. How do you guys feel about it?
I'm reminded of this quote by an American writer called Melody Beattie. And she says, "Gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow."
Mm.
And I like this way of using, gratitude. I think grounds us in our personal stories, in our personal lives, and can oftentimes help us deal with the scale and scariness of the world, because it is very personal, and it sort of, I think, allows us to appreciate where we've come from, appreciate what we have now, and realize maybe some of the things we're afraid of in the future aren't that scary, because the things that we care about are not that fragile.
Yeah.
I like
that. Well, one thing I thought about was habit forming for gratitude is a thing that can be difficult for a lot of people. We've talked about doing gratitude journaling as a really good example, right? But journaling in general as a habit is one of the hardest things to make stick for a lot of people. And I was reflecting on this last night, and I thought about how it's interesting, because this is just me, but maybe this resonates for you guys. I feel like, when things are good, it's a little harder to really want to practice gratitude, because things are working. And, I know that sounds bad, and it sounds maybe selfish.
It's counterintuitive, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like, so things are easy, so why be grateful? But I think that's kind of human tendency too. Mm-hmm. And so the
more you have, the more you want a lot of times, right? So that's where you start getting focused on what you don't have instead of what you do.
Good point. And that's a good point. And so my point was, when I reflected on this, I think that while we may be going through a time of uncertainty and stress, it may actually be a great time to create gratitude habits, because now you are a little more grateful for the stuff you do have. You're grateful for your family and friends, your health, if you have it right now, whatever you do have. So anyway, that was our little segment on why gratitude.
Let me
matters.
add to that though, real quick, because when I think about gratitude, I think about two people in my life. My parents. My mom used to, as I was growing up, always talk about count your blessings, and this was a regular thing. Like, stay on top of, keep it top of mind, the things that you have that you should be grateful for. And the other one is my dad. My dad actually does this. This is his version of gratitude practice. He gets up every morning and walks out to the driveway and pick up the newspaper. And that's his moment of taking the world in and thinking about all of the reasons why he is grateful for the things that he has in life. And, he tells me about it all the time when we talk. He's like, yep, that's when I sit down and I think about my sons. I think about this great country we live in, this opportunity to be comfortable. And that's how he does it. And so I like to think that I've had a pretty good example in both of those cases. So
that's awesome.
Shout out to the folks.
Parents are A+. All right. Well, let's move into what we are super into right now. This is April 18th that we're recording this, and Darren, March, and I are always finding new things to be fascinated by, to get into. And so this is the thing right now that we happen to be interested in. I'm kind of curious. Do either of you want to kick it off? Start with one of your
March
topics?
Kick his off. March has got some cool stuff.
Okay. Yeah, so it's interesting. This is a little bit. I mean, I have been appreciative of the internet for a long time, and I've been a huge fan of it. I think it's been
really. I never realized that.
No, you never realized that I based my entire career around it. But the current situation has made me realize, particularly, kind of what an amazing thing it is. And I think if you were to make a modern list of the 7 wonders of the world, the internet would be one of them. It's to me, it is so much more impressive than any building, any bridge, any dam. It is, all of these things that we're impressed by the ability of humans to do. The internet is just this extraordinary thing. And if you're watching on the video, I'll be sharing some things to help you visualize what the internet really is like.
So let me just understand. Are you saying pyramids and then internet above pyramids?
Oh yeah. All right. I will say,
just want to understand.
The pyramids are
impressive for sure.
Yeah. They're different. The pyramids were impressive given the tools and the available technologies of the time.
Yeah, well,
but if you on a straight up, like if aliens came to the planet and they made these piles of rocks, or they interconnected every human in the planet in a telecommunications network, they're going to be impressed by the network more than the pyramids in what are relatively small things in one country. So yeah,
and you could judge it on the impact too. I mean, the pyramids have had a great impact on that part of the world for quite a long time. The internet is global.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. So, I mean, it's easy. I think it's easy to lose sight of something that's just so powerful and so ubiquitous. But like at the scale to impact humanity the way it does today, the internet's really only been doing that since about like 1995. So in the last 25 years, in our lifetimes, we have witnessed essentially a complete transformation of how business is done, how finance is conducted, how our lives are lived has been completely changed by this fundamental infrastructure that we built.
So what are we looking at?
So this is a map of all of the cables that make up the internet. So what we're looking at is it's a map, and it's a map of the world, and it's covered in all these green lines. And you basically connect every part of the world to every other part of the world. They span every ocean, they wrap around the continents, and they sort of engulf the world in literally cables. Now it's interesting. The ones that are most impressive to me on this scale are like the deep sea cables that span both the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean.
That's kind of a marvel, really.
They totally are. I don't know what I pictured. I must have pictured these things as gargantuan things. I think I was thinking, have you ever been to New York and the suspension bridges like the Brooklyn Bridge and or the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and they've got these huge massive steel wound cables. That's what I was picturing. It turns out that most of these cables, that the vast majority of the internet traffic goes across, are about the thickness of a garden hose. And so they're really quite diminutive, but they're filled with modern miracles in themselves, right? Because the reason they work is that they are filled with unbroken glass optic fiber cables the thickness of a human hair. And across those cables travels essentially 40,000 movies a second travel across these cables. So I know I seem to be waxing lyrical about cables, but the fact that this was built, right, and it crosses essentially every border in the world, right? It goes into so many jurisdictions, and the part of it that's sort of conceptually amazing is that the internet is a network of networks, right? And so they didn't say we're going to build this thing and it's going to be the best American network or the best French network or they built it so that you could plug anything, any computer network made any way at all, using any protocols and any rules, into any other network using any hardware, any rules, any software. It doesn't matter. They built it so essentially as like universal Lego. Like imagine that we had built it in such a way where you could take a piece out of any car and put it into any other car and it would work, right? Or like it's just astonishing. And clever as well. Anyway,
and every time you add a piece, it gets better and better and better.
That's right. Now I'll have a quick look. So that's the terrestrial, like undersea and overland cables. What I'm showing you now is the complementary version of this network that we built in space. So if you're on the video,
that didn't even look at the previous one didn't even count the satellites, but you were already there.
So this is essentially what you're seeing in this is this dense cloud of tiny little particles floating around the Earth at all sorts of different distances. And there are all sorts of different colors, but the majority of them are red, and the red ones are telecommunication satellites, and these are part of our internet. And they complement together. And what's amazing is, and this is sort of just the last little geeky thing I'll say about the internet before I talk about like why I love what it does for us, is the three of us are sitting here on Skype right now recording this. We're looking at each other, we're hearing each other, we're 6,000 miles apart, and the packets of information that are traveling back and forth between us are taking different paths. Some of the packets are zooming, on that garden hose underneath the Atlantic and then popping up to a satellite and then back down again from New York to San Francisco and then to Seattle. Some of them are zooming across cables that are laid across Canada. Like, the packets are just finding any way around the world to get to where they get to, and they can get there so fast and so efficiently that we can see and hear each other as if we're in the same room.
It's funny you say that. Have you ever done a trace route? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You should explain what that is, because a lot of people who aren't nerds probably don't know what that is.
Yeah, and I'm gonna plug an idea that I had a while back, like maybe 10 plus years ago. So trace routing is something you can do when you're on the internet and you go to sort of like a little command prompt. You can type in something called a trace route. Trace route will take a look at all those little hops that March was talking about, where these little packets of information, they go from where you are to wherever the destination is, and they jump between locations. So they'll jump where I'm recording this in Seattle right now. March is over there in Dublin. It's going to jump from Seattle potentially to Washington, D.C., to New York, and then maybe to London, and then over into Dublin. And you can see how that goes on the network by typing in trace route and putting in your destination. Interestingly enough, about, I guess it's been like 12 plus years ago, I had this idea that you could use trace route to calculate the carbon footprint of each individual internet search. So if you're doing a search for something, you could trace route it. You could find out where it hopped. You could look at the machines that are controlling the traffic at every one of those hops, and you could calculate the little carbon footprint of that. And I did a business model for it, and you could actually, I just open sourced the business model. It's called agreener.com. So if you go to agreener.com, you can actually see what I had in it, and it shows trace routing and how you can do all of that. It's actually totally fascinating.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay,
so I share this geekiness with you, March. I am totally fascinated by this.
So the thing is, I think I'm just the first part of it. I'm just impressed with and grateful for the ingenuity and collaboration of humankind to build such an extraordinary thing. Even if they just built it and were like the pyramids, which they didn't do anything after you built them, they were just impressive. We have built an incredibly impressive thing, but on top of that, it does all these astonishing things for us, right? And like the degree of human connection that I think we've all been feeling, and the discovery that like everyone has had of like no one knew what Zoom was 6 months ago, and I think everybody in the universe knows what Zoom is now, right? That we've been using these tools to stay connected and to fend off loneliness and to support each other. I think that's one.
Which, by the way, John Zeratsky made this point in our interview with him in a recent episode. Totally kind of flipped the tech backlash thing on its head, right? Super interesting just to see how people's thoughts evolve about technology right now. 6 months ago, it was, it's isolating everybody, it's privacy issues, it's hacking elections. And now it's, oh my gosh, what would we do if we didn't have this right now, right? We'd be going crazy. So, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so it keeps us connected together, but it also keeps us fed and clothed and gives us all of those essential things, because we're all, at one end of the supply chain, which is all mediated over the internet, ordering things online. And whether it's, an emergency supply kit that you're ordering off Amazon, or whether it's dinner that you're ordering and someone's going to deliver to your house, or maybe you're ordering groceries. That's one step of it. But then the way the grocery stores manage their inventory to make sure that they have enough food and they're coordinating with their suppliers is over the internet. And the way that the suppliers and all the distributors coordinate with the farmers is over the internet. And the way that everybody gets paid for every step along that way
Let me
is
guess.
over the internet.
It's over the internet. Yeah.
It's over the internet.
And the way the farmers track
Say
the
it with
crops
us.
growing in the field is actually over the internet too.
That's right. That's right.
Everybody together. It's over the internet. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
And I would say many of the people who have kids who are listening to the show, their kids are doing remote learning right now. And
Over the internet. Yeah.
over the internet. That's right. Right. So the internet is enabling our children's education. It's enabling us to stay connected as humans. It's enabling us to have the products and the services that we need. And also, and I think, our podcast is an example of this, is that it is a way for people to consume information and knowledge, whether for pleasure or for their own education. And that massive sharing of knowledge and the relaxation that comes from watching a great movie or TV show or listening to your favorite podcast all happens over the internet. So I'm super grateful and appreciative of it. And I think I have been, and I've been in love with the internet since it first appeared, and I was like, this is what my whole life's going to be about. But it feels really personal right now. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like, this cool sci-fi thing, which it is, but it feels like this is the thing that means it's intimate, right? Like I get to see my friends. I wished my sister a happy birthday over the internet the other day. We blew out her birthday candles over the internet the other day because we can't see each other right now because of the situation. And I firmly believe that, the internet is going to be a key tool in both defeating this and future pandemics, and also is going to be one of the key tools we have to fight climate change. Because the fact that we can run our lives this way over the internet is it gives us the alternative to getting on airplanes or driving in cars. Mm-hmm. And by the way, when we do have all electric automated cars, you know how they're going to run? Say it with me.
Over the internet.
That's right. Yes. Okay. So that's my ode to the internet. That's what I'm all about right now.
I love that. That's really nice.
Cool.
We on that point about it feeling more personal lately, I had made this point in our recent episode where I said a prediction was I think that the internet's going to move more and more towards less anonymous. And you're seeing this, I said, examples where everybody is playing video games, but everybody wants to watch the streaming person playing the video game now. That's what all the kids want, right? There's a yearning.
You mean less faceless?
Yeah.
And
early internet was all anonymous, all make your online profile, AOL.com, whatever. And, I think Facebook kicked this off, a decade ago. But I think that kids are growing up now with expecting identity online, wanting that. Like, it's a human thing we all want. We want to be connected to other people. And I think like the internet early days, whatever, the first 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, it was all like hard to do. Cameras weren't good enough. Tech was expensive, whatever. And we had this notion, some people, I think, had this notion of like, the internet's going to be the second identity or the anonymous world for the human race or whatever. And I think, I just don't think it's going to end up that way. I think we're going to move more towards identity because it is fun. It's authentic. It's real. It's connects people. It's better. It's harder to bully when you have your real identity, like all that kind of stuff. So, that's really cool, March. I'm glad that you're digging the internet.
Yeah, I am. I'm appreciating it. How about you, Ian? What's
Ian's got something he's talked about in a previous episode before.
Yeah.
But this is going to go in a completely different direction.
I've been hinting in recent episodes. We talked about it a little bit. Darren and I did that bonus episode.
Hinting. You've been beating us over the head. You love this. Tear the Band-Aid off, baby.
It's this thing right here. Let's see if let's see if the camera actually. There it goes. Oh, look at that.
There it is.
So this is called coffee, guys. It is a drink consumed by a lot of humans.
Ian's opium right now.
That's right.
And it is a thing that I think is, frankly, a little bit of a wonder in my world. Like if I were to put this up there, this would be a wonder to me. So the reasons
like the
are,
internet?
Yeah. Like I think it over the internet. There's no coffee over the internet, although actually there kind of is. I'm going to talk about that.
I'm pretty sure you're going to get to that.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So let me set the scene here. I am 32. I forget my age. I'm 31 or 32. One of those.
You can find that on the internet, by the way.
Over the internet. This episode is now sponsored by the internet.
The internet. It's true.
So I grew up most of my life, like all through my 20s, college, all that, early career, first like 10 years of working. I didn't drink an ounce of coffee in my life, never really into it, never tried it. Met my current wife in one of our first dates. She's like, hey, let me take you to, you live in Seattle. Let me take you to an espresso shop. This is a thing. You need to try this. And she introduced me.
You have to tell us which one it was.
Oh, it was one of the OGs of the espresso world, Vivace in Seattle.
I was hoping you were going to say Vivace. Yes.
Yes. So Love Vivace has a history behind it. They kicked off
truly
a lot of it
of espresso.
Yeah. Go look them up. If you're ever in Seattle, go there. And so my first coffee drink ever in my life was a mocha, chocolate mocha latte from Vivace Coffee in Seattle. And it all went downhill from there, guys. But it was actually very interesting. So to fast forward a little bit, I basically just drank lattes and mochas because I like chocolate a lot. And a mocha, if you're not into coffee at all,
wrong with that.
Take coffee, take espresso, which is basically coffee where they shoot water at a high pressure through it to extract the coffee. You put some of that in a cup. You put some chocolate, usually syrup, and you put some milk. Usually, you could do something else like coconut milk, almond milk, whatever you want. And you have a mocha. It's pretty simple. So I drank that for almost 3-4 years only, exclusively. Like that's all I did. And then I, for some reason, realized, well, there's a lot of sugar in that. And so maybe I could do something better. I also had a friend who was really into coffee, and he encouraged me to explore a little bit. And so I started to enjoy something called a pour over. And I know, actually, Darren, like just a couple months ago, I was like talking to him, and he was like, "What exactly is the pour over thing? Like, what is this all about?"
Yeah,
I kind of know
I
it.
I think a pour over is like a Mr. Coffee, but I don't think that's what it is.
So it turns out that a pour over is, and I'm going to bring props into the scene because we're on video and I can do this.
Props are good.
Pour over, you can do with something like this. So this right here is called a Chemex. This is a, if you're listening to audio only, this is a glass container. That
it's like an hourglass.
It looks like an hourglass, and the coffee brews down here on the bottom, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the top is where you're going to put a filter, and you're going to put your coffee up here, and then the coffee will get poured over with water, and that water will drain through the coffee, extract the coffee, and then their coffee will end up in the bottom.
And now explain why a pour over is different than other kinds of coffee. Because I think that's the piece that I wasn't 100% sure of. I was like, oh, well, my family's had a Mr. Coffee machine for the most of my life. But this is different.
So what I will say is we are trying to keep each of what we're in 2 segments to about 10 minutes today. And there's zero chance that I am going to explain all the nuances of coffee, nor do I even proclaim to know all of them right now. I'm learning. But I will say a couple things. So first, the way you do this, right, is you're going to pour the water yourself over the top of the coffee. And instead of a machine doing it for you, right? So what that means is in general, the better your technique gets, the more you learn about the variables involved. Time, for example, the flow rate of the water, the temperature of the water, the beans that you've done, the ground size of the beans that you've chosen to grind. All of those things mean you have variables that you can, as the person pouring over, you can control, right? If you put this in a machine, you have just said, I don't want any control. I want automaticness. I just want my coffee. I'm half awake. It's 7 a.m. I get that. I'm a person. I get it. However, I'm also a person who likes control. I like to play. And so this pour over means I get to play and figure out what I like, what I don't like. I get to try things, right? I get to experiment. Some days I do it coarse.
Can you put more than one filter in there and keep the thing going slower, and so that the water's in contact with the grounds?
Yes.
Can you do that? That works. That's the thing.
So the filters are another important part. Chemex, actually, that's one of the reasons people use Chemexes is the filters are thicker and they reduce more of the kind of bitterness of coffee. And so what typically coffee people will say is that if you use a Chemex, you will get a cleaner taste. You will get more off. Like if you want to taste exactly what this bean really tastes like, use a thicker filter out more of the other stuff, and you'll taste the coffee. So that's a Chemex. That's a pour over. Some other stuff though I'm geeking out on. So when you start doing pour overs, right, you can pick your beans. You can choose exactly what you want to drink. One of the things that's interesting and kind of newer to people in what we call second or third waves is the ability to single origin source your coffee beans. Meaning you can know exactly from what farm your coffee is coming from, rather than having a blend that has some Starbucks marketing name on it that you have no clue where that came from, right?
And this is similar to the way people think about wine, right? So people think about wine, they're like, oh, I know the vineyard. It's on the south slope. It gets sun in the morning. It gets shade in the evening. And because of that, the grape tastes a little different, blah, blah, blah. Coffee's same way, right?
That's right. So here is an example of something. This is a coffee that I really enjoyed recently. This is, I'm trying to play with the camera. Sorry, guys, to get it to focus. This is a really nice coffee. This was a roaster.
You can.
Yeah, and on the back here, you can see this. This is brandy wine. This is a really nice one here. You can see it has tasting notes. So also like wine, coffee can start to have tasting notes, and you can start to play with that, which I really enjoy. So you can start to say,
look at that. Cane sugar, vanilla?
Yeah. So
that's a Colombia. Colombias are good. They're fruity.
So I'm enjoying the fact that I can play with single origin roasts and beans, learn about different regions, start to understand, what flavors we like. Generally, when you're tasting coffee, there's this is really generally, there's things that are more acidic and bright and fruity, and then there's things that are more earthy and chocolatey and caramelly and nutty. And people generally prefer one or the other. So, for example, my wife.
I'm on the earthy train.
Okay. Darren, how about you?
I'm a little bit all over the map. I can appreciate both. I just had a really good cup of coffee that was in an Italian Venetian style this morning, and it was earthy and rich and robust. But I also like the fruity ones, like the ones that you're talking about that have it's like a stone fruit or something. It's not peaches, but apricots. Yeah, things like that.
Like I was telling the guys, I went to London for work. Actually, we all did this past January. I went to a coffee shop and I had this astoundingly good coffee from Yemen, which is one of the oldest exporting regions of coffee in the world, but it's very hard now because of turmoil there. But it was the tasting note was raspberry, and it was very acidic. And my goodness, was it like an explosion in your mouth of awesomeness. And so that was fun.
Did you see my note that I've got some Yemenese coffee coming?
I am so excited. Yeah.
I can't wait. I can't wait to try this.
Please report back.
You got me really pumped up about this.
Please report back. So that's fun because you can basically start to single origin source your beans, learn about different areas, much like people do with wine, learn what you like, what you don't like, acidic, fruity, earthy, chocolatey, whatever, and play with that and learn. And, the biggest thing I would say too is it's fun to start to realize that coffee is not, I think so many people hear the word coffee and they go, oh, that is this flavor. I have coffee ice cream. I know what coffee tastes like, right? It turns out like coffee is a large thing. And it can really be fun to play with.
That's the other thing too. Like you can scratch the surface and learn a little bit, and it's interesting and curious, or you can just go right down the rabbit hole, following Ian down the rabbit hole, and go as deep and intricate into this as you want. It's actually pretty cool. I think I like it.
Well, and the thing I'm trying to communicate to listeners is I think it is, so I was a newbie to this stuff. I didn't drink a lot of coffee beforehand, but I actually think if you were someone who let's say you're my parents, and for 45 years you've drank the same cup of basically the same cup of coffee every morning, I can only imagine if you're that type of person, how fun it must be to like try something really different and be like, whoa, I've drank this coffee thing for 40 years and now you're changing what this means to me, right? And like,
I didn't know it could be this.
It's like if somebody walked in the room and was like, here's a new banana. Try this. And you're like, what do you mean there's a new banana?
Right.
Yeah. Or if you've been drinking Folgers your entire life, or maybe instant Nescafe, it's someone bringing in a banana and you're like, what's this? And you're like, you know those little candies, those little yellow candies that you've been eating that you've been calling bananas?
Yeah.
This is what it was based on originally.
Right.
Like those are the original runs, though. Those are the best runs. Those bananas. Those things are so good.
And I actually like instant coffee, but it's a different beverage, right? It's as different from the kind of coffee you're talking about, Ian, as like tea is from coffee.
Yeah. So maybe to wrap up, I know I'm already over time for my segment.
Wait, real quick. Have you seen this new thing about whipped coffee? Lately, using
Delgado.
instant coffee.
Yeah.
Like instant grounds or something. I've just found out about this the other day.
Yes.
What is it?
It's the Delgado. It has. We can go deep dive on that in an extra episode.
Oh, that's the Delgado?
We'll do a bonus episode.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bomb of sugar in a cup that you're blending into whipped goodness. So it's tasty, but it's super bad for you. However, there are ways to make it a little more healthy and a little more authentically coffee.
That's good.
I'll go into that some other time. Let me wrap up. I need to talk about gadgets, guys. You know me and gadgets. So I have 2 gadgets I want to show and talk about today real quick. So they are both scales. So scales are, it turns out, actually interesting when you're doing your own coffee because you can get a little precise, and every gram matters with coffee if you start to geek out on it. So the first scale I wanted to show and talk about is called the Akaya Pearl. So this is a new coffee scale I just bought. I'm showing it on the video if you're interested in seeing. There, it's starting up.
Oh, wow. Look at that. It's got
pretty cool
lights on it.
So what's really cool about a coffee scale? You may say, like, why is there a thing called a coffee scale in the first place, Ian? There's already like scales for kitchens. How is this any different? It's different because it doesn't just measure weight in grams. It measures time and flow rate. And so it knows the rate at which you're adding things, and it knows the amount of time it's taking you to add the thing. And the thing in this case is water. Specifically for coffee.
Okay.
The other thing that they do is they flip the scale upside down. So the measurement part is actually on the bottom instead of the top. And why that matters is it means if anything spills, you don't ruin your scale. And that's a classic thing. If you spill a little bit of stuff and your scale is upright, it can get into the electronics and get ruined. So that was a little innovation they did with coffee scales that is really smart.
So help me understand this. So you tell the scale that I'm using a Chemex, I'm using this filter, I'm using these grounds, and it says, okay, great.
Not that complicated.
Oh, okay.
So it's just about, coffee's all about ratios of the amount of coffee to the amount of water, and then the time that it takes you to brew it. And so really all you're doing is you're tearing out the scale once you put your Chemex on top. You're putting your coffee in, tear it to 0, and then you set start on the timer.
So it's not just that you're measuring out the coffee using the scale. You're making the coffee on top of the scale.
Of the scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why.
Imagine that glass Chemexy thing sitting on top of this, right?
And so you zero it out, and it says, okay, now I'm adding the coffee, and it says, oh, you added 14 grams of coffee, and you say, great, now I'm zeroing or hitting the lap button, for lack of a better term, and it says, now I'm pouring the water in, and it goes, I know the ratio from water to coffee, and now it starts timing.
And then you might say, I want it to take 3 minutes to pour 150 grams of water on top of my 39 grams of ground coffee.
Oh, because you're controlling the flow? Is that how that works?
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, because I was going to say, how does it control the time? It doesn't. You control the time.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
Exactly.
That's like a little moment of meditation right there, because you got to control the water so it's steadily pouring in at the right flow rate. It's
actually really cool too, because this is what baristas are good at. This is what you pay a barista to do when you order a pour over in a shop. Like, they are masters at this, right? It's their craft, and it's taken seriously, and it's a thing that like you do get better at over time. And I'm a novice, like I've just started. But even in a couple of weeks of doing this, I'm already getting way better at like stopping the water exactly at 500 grams, because that's where
you could tell the difference between, that's interesting. See, now when you get really good, you'll be able to pour over with your left hand and fry an egg with your right hand.
And record a podcast at the same time.
All right.
All over.
So the scale's telling me to ease off, but I'm also burning my egg. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah. So anyway, the last one, real quick, we already talked about it, so I'm not going to go into detail. This is the bottomless scale. So this is a new startup. This is just a simple scale that is connected to the internet. You can actually see their little logo on it, potentially. And what you will get out of this is never-ending coffee. So they are writing algorithms that will know how to perfectly time the shipment dates with the amount of time it takes to get to you based on your location, and know that because the scale is beaming to them over the internet.
The internet.
Thank you. It's beaming them how much coffee is left in your current bag. So as you keep using coffee, it knows, okay, it looks like Ian's going to run out in a day or two. We'll start that shipment now. And that way you have a perfect flow of coffee beans. So you're never out and they're always fresh. So that's bottomless. Yeah, we did an
very
episode.
clever.
We'll put in the show notes.
I don't think I really understood what a proper coffee scale was for. I thought it was just for like measuring the weight of the ground coffee out of the container.
Yeah,
that's all I thought it was too.
Yeah, I see why that's a different device now. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
I didn't realize it was that nuanced for something like a pour over. Definitely different than Mr. Coffee.
Yes, and maybe the thing I'll wrap up with, one on the pour over, two on the like grateful for it. The pour over stuff, it's as you want to extract different flavors from coffee, like especially lighter roasts, you need more control over it. So that's why this matters. And then I'm grateful because coffee just is this thing that like kind of keeps you going. And it keeps, Michael Pollan just did a new audiobook on caffeine and the effects of it. And, it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you don't go crazy with it. And it kind of adds, the way he describes it is that it really adds a rhythm to your day. And I'm finding that I just really enjoy that rhythm. I like the rituals of making coffee in the morning. I like sharing it with my wife a little bit. I like talking and geeking out with other people about it. It turns out like everybody knows coffee a little bit. Like my parents are not into techie stuff that much, but I can talk about coffee with them, and it's cool. Yeah. Like I like that.
It totally does set a rhythm to your day. I'll say like after the third cup, the rhythm kind of increases in pace, which isn't bad either.
That's a different rhythm.
It's a tempo. Rhythm. The tempo. It sets a rhythm and a tempo.
That's heart palpitations, Darren. That's actually just a medical condition.
Totally.
Anyway, so I'm very grateful for coffee. It's fun. I would love to go do a whole episode and talk more about it. So. Yeah. Let's move to our last one, Mr. Darren. What are you digging right now? What are you grateful for?
I am geeking out on a book, and so I'm taking. These are the three things that we're talking about are so completely different. But the thing that I am really into is this book here. It's called Shantaram. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Okay,
is that coming through?
Yep,
it is. Yeah.
It's by an author named Gregory David Roberts. And the thing about this book is, I checked out the audiobook. Couple months ago, and it was absolutely it just grabbed me, this book, from the very beginning. And I started listening to it, and I got into it, and the way that the author writes, his prose is just so incredibly beautiful, and it's almost poetic in the way the author writes the story. And this is not an author I'd heard of. I don't know why. Apparently this book won a lot of awards when it came out a few years ago, but it hadn't come across my radar. I honestly don't remember how I found it. I think I found it in a friend's list on Goodreads. And to me, what's been so fascinating about this, so I'll tell you a little bit about the story. Not a lot, because it's not all that important to really appreciate what I love so much about this book. The book is about an ex-con that leaves his native country. He breaks out of jail, leaves his native country, and goes to India to sort of hide and start a new life. And he meets it's in the 80s. So it is loosely based on the author's life, which a lot of this actually happened in the author's life. But the main character meets all of these different characters in the world, the city of Bombay. And he sees what incredible wealth and opulence looks like. He lives in the slum for a period of time. He ends up kind of mixing a little bit with some loosely organized crime. But in the cast of characters is just so fascinating. And the book is almost written like an extended poem. And it mixes these deep life experiences with philosophy and just so much profound insight into the experience of life and the human condition. And I just was completely captivated by this book. I paused the audiobook at some point because I was just like, oh, I remember this specifically happened a few, like maybe a month or so ago. I was listening to the audiobook while I was on a bike ride, and I just stopped the bike, and I was just like, oh my God, this is the most incredible 30 seconds of prose that I've listened to. And I said, okay, I just ordered the hardbound that I showed in the video a minute ago, because what I decided I wanted to do was I wanted to read the book along while listening to the audiobook. And I read the book with a highlighter, and I've highlighted a number of passages from the book that I just think are absolutely beautiful and captivating. Anyway, So I have a couple of quotes that I think have been particularly interesting that I'll read. I won't bore you with them because I'm not a I guess I do co-host a podcast, so I guess at some level I do some audio acting or some voice acting, but I'm not a voice actor. But so this is an interesting passage. This is one of the first ones that I remember highlighting, and it says it is the setup on this is that the author is having a conversation with a group of people and they're a wide variety of people. Some of the people are sort of bad. Okay. Some of the people are his best friends. It says, sooner or later, fate puts us together with all the people, one by one, who show us what we could and shouldn't let ourselves become. Sooner or later, we meet the drunkard, the waster, the betrayer, the ruthless mind, and the hate-filled heart. But fate loads the dice, of course, because we usually find ourselves loving or pitying almost all of those people. And it's impossible to despise someone you honestly pity and to shun someone you truly love. Like, there's some deepness to that. I don't know. When I think about the experiences that you go through in life, something like that is really, I don't know. Those are sort of profound statements to me. So
that's really cool. How did you find this again?
It was on a friend. I need to go back and see. It was on a friend. I think it was my friend James Ball, who is actually a writer down in Tahoe. And he's one of the people who is very well read. And I tend to kind of skim people's Goodreads history to see kind of what they've rated and stuff. And I think
that's a good idea.
May have gotten it out of his. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is definitely going on my must-read list.
Well, yeah, the thing's really funny too. It's absolutely hilarious. I've been laughing out loud while reading this thing. So it runs the gamut of experiences.
If you will allow me, maybe I can wrap up with an additional quick book thing. I haven't even touched this, so I'm not going to talk about it, but I just want to put it up. This has been highly recommended by many people, including James Hoffman, who is the coffee guy that I'm digging, but also Tim Ferriss and Kevin Rose. They're all reading this during COVID, and I'm trying to get the focus. Sorry, and so the book is called Exhalation by Ted. I think it's Chang, and New York Times bestselling author of Stories of Your Life and Others. It was the basis for the Academy Award nominated movie Arrival, and this is a collection of short stories. It's almost, I think, science fiction-y a little bit. But it is, I'm really excited to dig into this. I've heard such good things about it being kind of the thing for the time of right now. Something to like take your mind off. And I think books are great for that, guys, especially not fiction stuff, right? Especially stuff that's not nonfiction. So.
And that's the other thing. I typically read a lot of nonfiction, and I go through these periods where I just like, I need something else, and I pick up a fictional book, and this was the one I picked up, and man, am I glad.
That's awesome.
Exhalation, I'm going to have to check that out too.
Yeah, we'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes that we talked about today, so you can get access to it if you would like. But I think we're going to wrap up. So that was 3 things we're super into right now. A little taste. We had over the internet. We had coffee with the nice little pour over thing. And then we had Darren with his deep, thoughtful books. So thanks for listening. Hope this was a little bit useful for you. If you would like to get links and show notes and all that good stuff, bettershow.io is the website. And then if you want, you can really help out our show by doing 2 things. You can tell a friend about it if you're digging it, but you can also, probably more importantly right now, rate the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. So you go to bettershow.io/RATE, rate. That is going to take you to a page where you can go rate the show wherever you listen to your podcasts, wherever podcasts are sold, as they say. And with that, guys, I think we want to wrap up. So any other last parting words or anything you want to add?
No, just continue to stay curious, find the things that inspire you, and go as deep into them as we're going into our things, I think. It's fun.
I love it. All right. Well, for The Better Show, I am Ian Micketel.
I'm Darren Austin.
And I'm Mark Rogers.
And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening or watching.